Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This six-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, normally I would kick off an episode and I say, this is going to be an absolute treat, or what a treat we have today. But today's episode's a little bit different. Today's episode's going to be an experience. We're talking to one of Maryland's finest. I think he started the first underground creepy crawler business back in the third grade, going on to many other entrepreneurial endeavors. Currently doing, and the co-founder of Hunt a Killer, which is an incredible date night, group night. We're going to dive all into it. Ryan Hogan, thank you so much for coming on the Got Your Six podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Tony. Appreciate it.
So like we talked about before the episode started, is as you continue to grow and scale at any point in your life, you're going to find people that you have to kind of break away from. And that's never an easy thing to do. It's very hard. How have you been able to kind of come back and make sure your foundation is still solid while kind of having to either like fire friends or grow, while you're in the Navy or going back to school? Can you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. So the first is the name of the game. It doesn't matter whether you're in the military. It doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur. The name of the game is the team or the people that you have around you, and ensuring that they understand the mission, they have clarity over what their role is, what they're responsible for. And when all that aligns and everybody's marching in the same direction, like magic happens. But the reality of that is during that journey, what you will find, and especially on the civilian side. So I've encountered this much more as an entrepreneur than I have in the military, because the military is all very structured, and there's an instruction and there's guidance and there's all these things that kind of help you grow into this role. There's training. In entrepreneurship, it's dog eat dog. Like everybody is just figuring it out at the same time. And what you'll find a lot is as you continue to grow, you need different skill sets, you need different experiences, you need different perspectives on the problems that you're solving. And so you'll find yourself quite often reevaluating. We run under a structure called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, and that has us reevaluate the core functions of the business and the team and right person, right seat every single quarter. And every single 12 months, we're making critical decisions based upon the foundation. Who is that senior leadership team? And ensuring that you've got the right people is important. And when those times come where there need to be tweaks or adjustments, what's most important is that you invested in that relationship, that you helped that person grow far beyond what they've helped the company. Like, when I think about what I do here at Hunt a Killer, sure, it's thinking about what's next and strategy and things like that, but really it's about investing in the people and in making sure that we're doing what we said we're going to do. And typically what you'll find is that if you've got the right people in the right seat and you've invested in that person and you've built and nurtured that relationship over time in a very authentic and genuine way, it pays dividends for when some of those adjustments or hard conversations have to come. And so that's really where I focus a lot of my time, is on the people. That's been a little challenging over the last 9 months, being floating around the Mediterranean. But that's the secret.
And so that's the point. That's an excellent point, is like you're still in the Naval Reserve or the U.S. Navy Reserves. You were on active duty for a while, but you also came into the Navy, not usually typically right out of high school. There was a time, and then you went into the Navy, and then you got your marketing degree from the School of Business at Maryland. How has that been, kind of first being on the civilian side, having that work experience, then coming in to have to build a team inside of the Navy?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I joined very young. So my mom signed my permission slip. I was 17 years old when I enlisted. And I got picked up for a special program in 2009 with the Navy called the Seaman to Admiral program. It's an enlisted commissioning. Basically, the Navy pays for you to go to any school you want to go to as long as it has an NROTC unit. And so I got off to a very late start, like you were talking about. I started college at 25, 26, maybe even 27. So I'm like 10 years ahead of everybody. I've got 10 years of being a helicopter air crewman under my belt doing real world missions. And then here I am right back in the seat, going through the Robert H. Smith School of Business. And I've got a full family. I'm still active duty and I've got all that time. And that was an interesting experience because, I had more gratitude for the opportunity. If I would have went to college at 17 or 18, I probably would have flunked out because I just didn't appreciate it. And so the fact that I got, 10 years of real world experience, it really made me appreciate and be thankful for the opportunity. And so I took it very seriously. It's not to say I got straight A's. I'm not a straight A guy. But certainly I put in a lot of time and effort into that milestone.
And with that, right, because at the same time in 2013, as you were graduating and getting your bachelor's degree, you were on this rocket with Derek, who is also your co-founder now at Hunter Killer, with the zombie racing. Like, if you remember back in the day for our audiences, there used to be those Facebook ads you'd see in like 2013 of, hey, you can go do a 5K run with zombies. That's Ryan. And then Ryan and Derek. How did you, some say balance, how did that all kind of work? I mean, ultimately we know how it ended, but how did you kind of continue to do one thing and kind of move to the next and be focused, or was it all just kind of together and it was a whirlwind?
Yeah. I think, one of the big misnomers in either entrepreneurship or doing, when I was active duty, so I was active duty Navy, going to school full time. I lived about an hour away from campus at the time with my wife and 3 kids. Now we have 4. And then was also running Run for Your Lives, which was the first ever 5-kilometer obstacle course race where people donned a flag football belt and then ran away from zombies for 5 kilometers. And like what I've learned is that there is no secret. The name of the game with me has always been delegation, and so making sure that you've got the right people around you. And getting things off your plate as quickly as possible. And there's a couple strategies that I've used in the past. I mean, today it's just a matter of understanding, like, can this really impact or change the business? If not, it probably should be on someone else's plate. But there's also mechanics you can use out there where you write down everything you do for a week and write down a value associated with that time. What would that be on an hourly basis? So if you spent 4 hours parsing through email and doing calendar invites, but you understand that you add $10,000 an hour to the business, then you should probably hire somebody, because you can hire somebody to do those $10, $15, $20 an hour jobs, and you can focus on the big picture. And so, the secret is that, or the secret is there is no secret. And, for me, something has always kind of been off balance. And it's just kind of where those fires, and it's a constant juggling act. And so I'm not very good at it. I'm still learning each day. But the big way that we were able to get through then and now is just through delegating things that shouldn't be on your plate and getting rid of them as quickly as possible.
And there's a key point too that you talk in there is being able to like ask for assistance or say, hey, I need help doing this task because I need to focus my priorities elsewhere. Have you ever had to go through like an ego check, or you put in barriers, or is it just like you said, figuring out how much time this is worth to me versus another task?
Yeah, I think, what I have seen, both in the military, but a lot in business, is like ego kills. Like ego will kill a team, ego will kill an individual, ego will kill performance. when someone is putting themselves over the betterment of either the operation or mission, or over top of what the company's trying to accomplish, there is always issues at the end of that. So like one thing about me is like, one, I'm never the smartest person in the room. You know, what I like to do is find incredible people that know whatever it is we need, that know it 10 times, because if they don't, then I could do it. So then why would I hire for that? And so like, I'm never the smartest person in the room. We hire brilliant people that have skill sets, whether it's creative or marketing or operations, that are years beyond, decades beyond where I am as an individual. And I make that known. And so I think one of the things that probably my team appreciates is I don't have ego. I don't go into a room with the brightest idea or saying, this is what we're going to do. I go into a room asking a question of what is the best thing we should do? And we have a conversation about it. And then we decide. And once we decide, we're all in. And so it's not consensus. Not everybody agrees on the direction. But once we feel confident in the decision that we've made, we're all on that train, and we're going to see it through.
Right, and there's a piece there too of buy-in, right? Now, like you said, not everybody needs to agree on it, but at least people know that they've been heard. Because when you were able to come back with Hunt to Killer, you rented out the space, you spent a year putting it all together, and realized this isn't really worth our time based on the value we're getting back from a financial standpoint. And you look to scale it at other ways. It also happened to be at the perfect time to kind of get into, you know, the mystery murder genre, the true crime genre, as that just continues to explode and grow these subcultures, because you had that community that you can go back to. And that's another, we'll go into that right now, is the community built around what you guys have at Hunt to Killer is incredible. Not just in the office, but the community in the Facebook page and everywhere else, because people feel trusted that they can come back. There's an establishment of psychological safety. Is that something you guys just happenstance across, or that was deliberate?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It's funny because sometimes when I think about it, it's like we stumbled into it, but once we realized what we had, we invested everything we had into that community. So just for a little bit of background, when Hunt to Killer was a live event, we transformed a 200-acre campground into a living crime scene. And the biggest issue that we had is when you look at Run for Your Lives, we could put 10, 15, 20,000 people through a course in any weekend. So that's anywhere from $600 to $2 million in revenues. With this event, we could only get 600 people activated at one time. You can't have, thousands of people standing around an open crime scene. And so the biggest challenge that we had there was that the concept just didn't scale. And so for us, it was all about what can scale, and how can we pivot the company into a scalable model? And so for us, we looked across and we said, we got product market fit. What other business model can we put this experience? Because at the heart of what we do, it's an experience. It's bringing people together, whether we do it on a 200-acre campground or whether we do it in the comfort of your own homes. And so we looked at different business models. The subscription business model was blowing up. There was a whole bunch of infrastructure softwares that you could just easily bolt on. And so we said, this is it. We're going to go after this. But what was really interesting is nobody was doing this. And so we were trying to take this experience and this story that we built in a gamification that was in real life and be able to deliver these through materials, paper, writing, actual trinkets inside of each box to make sure that we're leading people on an investigation. And so when you're doing something you don't know, you have your own ideas, but the reality is what only matters is what the customer thinks or what our detectives think. And so we started this group originally just to get a group of people together that we could say, hey, is this great or does it suck? And that's kind of how we built that trust in the beginning, is because when they told us it sucked, we listened, we smiled. Because we want you to tell us what's bad so that we can go and fix it. And like we were talking about earlier, the boxes that are sitting on the shelves of Targets and Walmarts and Barnes and Nobles, those are thousands of iterations over 6 years that started at this episodic subscription and now has been honed into this, incredible mass market experience. So, for us, it was luck. We did it in the beginning just to be able to get people and get the feedback, because what we were doing was so new and unique. But once we understood that people kept joining and people wanted to have their own conversations and talk about things, we invested everything and nurtured the shit out of it.
Yeah. And what I found doing the podcast, talking to other Sixers, is luck. Whenever there's mention of luck, there's always a mention of a ton of iteration that has gone into it. Because now, like you said, you're doing episodic things where you're now able to on-ramp people into 6-7 boxes, and they're still able to play along and enter at any point. And the other piece, too, is like you have talked about where the pieces aren't so specific. You don't go on the internet and Google it and find out what happens. Like, you still have to play the game and be in it and be an experience. How have you seen that evolve, the creative side of it, whether it be marketing, writing, game theory of the game as it continues to evolve?
Yeah. Gosh, like so many things. I guess starting with the feedback loop. So like we have this feedback loop that like starts with focus groups, that goes into the community, that goes into just if we have your email address and we know that you purchased something, like we'll ask you very specific questions. And all of these things go back to the creative team where we sit and ponder, like, how do we address these things that people say they love and what people say they don't love? So for us, it's all about doubling down on what they do love and stopping or eliminating what they don't. And, you know, I think a big thing for us, especially in the beginning, from a product standpoint, is it was challenging. There were no instructions. Like we just sent you a box of stuff and just said, go. You know, today, if you were to join the subscription, you would get a box. The first box would have instructions. It would have this pamphlet in it that is from the actual person that's asking you for help, giving you a full background on the story. But in the beginning, it was a completely different market. These were true crime diehards. They didn't want to be told what to do. Just send me my evidence and I'll tell you who did it. And that's not mass market. So like as we've gotten further and further away from that bullseye and more into mass market, like mass market just wants a fun experience. Like no, they don't want to crack a cipher for 3.5 hours.
They're not looking for the Da Vinci Code every time they open a box. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's completely different. And so like, you know, what have we done? We've eliminated ciphers from certain experiences. We've made it easier. We've added instructions. Just a lot of these things that appeal more to mass market, with the whole notion of like, our job is not to stump the detective. Our job is for them to have a great experience with the people that they're around. And so that's always top of mind. Very similar with marketing. Marketing, we started with a very niche audience, and it was all about like, do you have what it takes? And like very, very like challenging, and kind of almost baiting the customer or the detective to see if they could solve the crime. Today, we highlight the experience that they're having with friends and family, and what we believe or what we know that they're already doing with our experience. And so, yeah, it's incredible what this has evolved into, both product marketing, operations, obviously, but less consumer facing. But 6 years, like you wouldn't even know who we were 6 years ago if you took a look.
Right. And then how have you taken that feedback loop and applied it to your role in the Navy?
Interesting. Yeah, I think, for me, it's got to start with the people. So, you know, my last 9-month deployment, it was, I was the operations officer on the USNS Trenton. And like, I didn't come in and say like, I know what I'm doing and start rearranging things. You know, the first thing that I did, very first week that I got there, made 0 changes and sat down with, either who our customers were, from the OS shop. And, you know, that could be everybody from the captain of the ship to my OIC, to sitting down with my team to understand like what's going right and what's going wrong. And I always look for the quick wins. And it's not to say that I don't invest in long wins, but you get a couple quick wins and you can get a lot more buy-in on the hard changes that you need. You start building that repetition. You start building the, like, we can do it. And so immediately, when I hear a good idea and there's no reason that we can't do whatever that was, one of the ideas on the ship was to change the watch hours. And it was like, I don't understand why we're doing it this way. And I was like, well, I don't either. And it sounds like a great idea, so let's change it. And we did. They got an immediate win. And there was certainly more buy-in when, you know, we had to have tougher changes.
Right, because it's not Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, right? Because you're part of a team, you're part of an organization. All you're looking for is how do we kind of just get the wheel turning, right? You're not trying to push a rock by yourself. And I think that's so valuable that we often overlook because we're trying to focus on that like long-term win. And we can only win doing this one thing this way, when sometimes it's as simple as just like, why is this rule in place? Well, that's what the book says. Who wrote the book? You did. Well, I can rewrite the book or the memo or whatever it may be. Along the way, right, after coming back from, deployments, and what are you working on now in terms of like personal growth that you're starting to see benefits in that maybe 9, 10 a year ago wasn't even on your radar?
Yeah, probably a little bit more assertiveness. And so in EOS, it's about a visionary and an integrator, and this dual role in which like there's a partnership, and like one person is the hammer and the other person just kind of lives in the clouds. And I came back and took both of those roles. And like for me, integrator is kind of hard because like I'm a people person. I like to please people. I don't like telling people no, or like we can't do that, or like, hey, you're screwing up and we need to correct that. Those are just uncomfortable conversations. And actually, weirdly, like that's something that I worked on hard during deployment, and something that I'm carrying through today. Now, I've only been back for 2 weeks, and I've only had one meeting or one staff meeting since I've been back. But, certainly making sure that we're looking at the right things, making sure the right people on the team, restructuring where we need to, and having those conversations. So, I would say like assertiveness or being more direct with feedback is something that I worked on for the last 9 months.
And that's such a mindset change, like you were saying, through EOS. Before we get, are there any like EOS books or anything that you've kind of seen along the way, or places you point to when people ask? Because that's not a term that's really talked a lot about in military circles, but I think it does play a part as we all try to look to build team and culture.
Yeah, rocket fuel is the difference between the dynamic of the visionary and the integrator. I was trying to look for the other ones on my bookshelf. But the things that, like, if you're running a business that says that say has more than 10 people, like, highly recommend the book Traction, or What the Heck is EOS, because it really helps you think about like we do these things, especially in business school. It's like, what's the vision and what's the mission and what are the core values? And like, these are very simple things that organizations overlook because they think they're goofy or they don't mean anything. But like the organization is the brand. The people are the brand. And like, if they're not following by the core values, then like you don't really have a strong, cohesive brand. Because not everybody's on the same page. So like what creative team is shipping, or the products that you're creating, are different than the message that you're marketing, are different than like the promises that you're delivering on with the operations team. So like, it is so critical to have all of that stuff in place. And EOS, so the Traction book and some of these others, they just give you the framework in which to think about it.
Right, and the big takeaway there, right, too, is audio needs to match the visual, because if there's a disconnect, whether it's a customer or with a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, you're going to lose that buy-in, and all that momentum that you started to build and turning the wheel, it can quickly stop. And you don't know how to, you got to then go back and repair and take the time to invest back in those relationships like we initially started the conversation with. Yeah.
Like, what is it? Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. Like, doing what you say you're going to do, and consistency. And it's not like you can be shit hot and doing the right thing for 6 months, and like you screw up one thing, or get caught in a lie, or do something that's against your core values, or just anything. Like, everything that you built is out the window. And so it's incredible what consistency actually means to an organization. And you talked about kind of the consistency of the messaging. Like, we just hired a new VP of marketing. She joined us in December of last year. And like, that's what she has spent the last 30, 45 days on, is really looking at like, what are the values of the organization, and how are we living those values in the products that we create? And it's amazing, because like, she's looking at marketing messaging that we've been putting out for the last 4 years, looking at the products that we create and saying like, there's a disconnect here, and we need to figure out what that disconnect is and get it closer together. So I'm seeing it in real time, and it's important.
And that has to just like, that makes you then think too, like as you were talking about, as you're in staff meetings and whatnot, where you're messaging something and you're like, you have to almost take a step back sometimes and be like, are we saying what we're actually doing, or are we just doing what we're saying? And those are
100%.
two different things. And along that way, right, like through the iteration and making sure your messaging is more or less, I'm using air quotes, on brand, you're going to have to own a lot of things, both successes and wins, right? You see a lot of successful leaders go back and like put it on the team, and then you own the losses. What failure or loss have you owned that you've been most proud of?
That's good. Probably it goes back to, I know we're spending a lot of time on team and hiring. Jack Welch, in his book, I think it's called Winning. One of the things he talks about is like at the pinnacle, at the peak of his career, at the peak of the turnaround at GE, he said he only got hiring right 50% of the time. And like, you want to talk about competitive advantages. Being able to hire is such a competitive advantage. And like, I don't have it 50%. I don't even get it right 50% of the time. And so like, for me, when we've made the wrong decision, like immediately saying we've made the wrong decision, no ego, no, like, this is your fault. This is, how dare you? It's like, we made the wrong decision, acknowledge it. And we're going to move forward. And I've had to say things like that to the board. So when we talk about good things, it's always we or they. So like, hey, we had an incredible quarter. Or the marketing team did great, or the creative team just got an award for this product. But if the product didn't ship, it's, I missed that. I missed the fact that we were going to have to airship this. It should have came up at a level 10 that I was leading. And so like, it's just so important that, the team gets the wins. You get the losses. But that's okay, because like, you need the team. And the losses are on you, not them. You missed it.
Right. That's part that you want to be the leader, right? That's what you have to take on as well. As we wrap up, Ryan, I want to know, how today are you better than yesterday?
This is probably just going to go into like personal health. So I'm a believer in I'm reading this book called Day One right now. And what's really interesting is like, it's about treating every day as day one. It's about leadership and how to communicate with your team, and, always being on this idea that like today is going to be better than yesterday, and not some like it's going to be better like through some magic. Like, right. No, you're going to solve more problems, or you're going to grow personally, or whatever the case may be. Like for me, this has nothing to do with business, but for me, it's been all about health, like health and fitness. I think during the pandemic, I'm working out of my basement right now. And this is how it's been since February, March, April 2020. And like, that can create stagnation and unhealthy habits. And the deployment was so great because, I got to work out, and the food, all you have to do is avoid the dessert bar, and you're eating well. So, yeah. So, for me, it's probably the biggest thing is like getting healthy, because, being strong physically, not like strong, but like,
right.
like, pushing and challenging yourself physically. You are yoked for the audience
listening, like Ryan's just like,
No, I'm not. But like, it makes your mind stronger. You can take on more stress. You can think more clearly, and like, it all just comes together. Sleep, eat, wellness, exercise. All of those things are critically important. So, not business related, but but definitely how I'm better today than yesterday.
Which one has been the hardest?
Which one? You talking about
you mentioned sleep, working out, eating, or if there's something else along there that you're like, I am trying so hard to be able to do this thing because I know it has the benefits, but I'm having trouble continuing to establish this routine or habit.
Yeah, I would probably go back to diet on that one. Like it is so hard with I know we're getting off track, but it is so hard, man, with like snacks and everything in the house, and like you're always trying and you're always pushing, and then also making sure that you're getting the right amount of calories. And so like for me, I'm very extreme, and like most entrepreneurs are, you're like when you're all in, it's all you can think about. I think that's why like half of us have ADD, because like once we focus or once we get our eyes set on something, you just don't stop. Right. And so like, diet for me would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this new intermittent fasting. And then you realize you're eating like 700 calories a day and you're actually making it worse for yourself. So yeah, I mean, eating consistently, making sure you got the right balance, has probably been the biggest challenge through this.
That's huge, right? Because like, that's something we don't talk a lot about, because it's always like, this is all this success, or like you can attribute it. But as we've talked about throughout this episode, it's not an overnight success. There's going to be breaks in the chain, but it's how quickly you can link the chain back together to be successful. Like you said, never give up. Always keep coming back.
That's it. That's it, man. I mean, like, this business, Hunt to Killer on the outside, if you look at the press, if you look at the Inc. list and all of these amazing accomplishments and accolades that we've gotten over the last 6 years, what they hide is the fire behind the scenes. I mean, all we're doing every single day is solving problems. And some of those problems are critical. Like, we're still hanging on for dear life today. We're trying to make that turn. We were an event company, then we were a subscription box company, then we were a subscription/premium, and now we're getting into retail. And retail is lucrative, which is great. But if you're familiar with direct consumer and iOS 14.5 and everything that's going on in the performance
app track. Yeah.
Yep. With digital marketing, like, CPMs and CPAs are through the roof. And so it's just no longer cost effective to advertise. So, a business that was spending us, for instance, we hit $50 some million in revenue, because we were able to deploy $60,000 a day in direct response advertising. The minute that channel, it gets hurt, or gets blocked, like it becomes very challenging. And so, we are every single day waking up and solving big problems, and it's just a matter of not giving up. That's it, man. That's it.
Absolutely. Ryan, where can people go to connect with you and learn more about Hunt to Killer?
So Hunt to Killer, huntakiller.com, HUNTAKILLER. We're on shelves of Target, Walmart, Barnes and Nobles, things like that. Hopefully we can get on AFES and the Navy exchanges in the future. But like most importantly,
we'll put in a good word.
There you go. Most importantly, I love to connect with fellow veteran entrepreneurs. And so you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's like /RyanHogan or something like that. But, I love connecting with founders, especially when they're veteran, because like we've got an edge over everybody, because like we truly don't know how to give up. And I mean, I've met like some VC firms out there that only invest in veterans, and they said it was the best like niche they ever got into. So, I love giving back and helping out, and happy to connect there.
Awesome. Ryan, in the show notes, we'll make sure to link not only how to connect to Hunt to Killer so they can get a subscription, but also connect to you and all your book recommendations. But thank you so much for sharing your strategies, your methods, your tactics, and most importantly, thanks for having our six.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tony. Appreciate it.
I did.